My parents didn't scream, didn't argue, and didn't even look the slightest bit ashamed. They simply sat across from me, composed and emotionless, and told me they would be raising my rent unless I agreed to become my sister's unpaid nanny for hours every evening, 2 weekends every month. They called it helping family. I called it what it truly was: coercion disguised as obligation. They assumed I would fold the way I always had, but they had no idea I was already planning my exit. They didn't know what I had discovered the night before. My name is Chloe Bennett, and for most of my adult life, I convinced myself that I had created just enough distance from my family to breathe freely. I didn't want escape, just space. But I learned the hard way that space can disappear when the people holding power over you decide they want more. 6 years ago, when I moved into the small apartment my parents owned, it felt like the perfect arrangement: affordable rent, close to work, quiet. I decorated it slowly with pieces that made it feel safe. But underneath my family's picture-perfect exterior lay a hierarchy built around my older sister, Serena. Everything revolved around her needs, her struggles, her comfort. I was the capable one, the one who adjusted, the one who never asked for anything. Even after Serena married and had 3 kids, the pattern stayed the same. They prioritized her, and I quietly existed in the background. In the weeks before the family meeting, I sensed a shift: pointed comments, guilt-laced reminders about sacrifice. But I didn't expect a trap. The moment I stepped into the living room, the tension told me everything. My father pacing, my mother perched stiffly, Serena twisting her wedding ring. Then came the plan: printed, detailed, suffocating. School pickups, homework supervision, dinners, 4 hours daily, 2 weekends a month. I mentioned my job. My father dismissed it. Adjust, he said. Family comes first, and then the ultimatum: comply or pay full rent immediately. They said it like it was logical, like my independence was theirs to negotiate. But when I got home and read my lease, I realized the threat was illegal. They couldn't raise rent on the spot, couldn't exceed limits, couldn't bypass notice periods. Their entire ultimatum was built on control, not truth. That night, my clarity returned. I searched for apartments, toured new places, found a renovated one with exposed brick and tall windows. Honest, warm, mine. My application was approved within days. I packed quietly, mailed my legal notice, and hired movers. By Saturday afternoon, I stood in my old apartment for the last time, cleaned it carefully, left the keys, and walked away. My phone exploded with calls: 23 missed calls, dozens of messages. I didn't answer any. By Sunday, I blocked their numbers. By Tuesday, they escalated to sending a guilt-filled letter to my workplace. My lawyer handled it with blunt precision. Any harassment would be documented. The silence afterward felt like oxygen. 2 weeks later, my aunt told me they hired a real nanny, someone they actually had to pay. Balance at last. Then came mediation. A long table, lawyers, a mediator. My parents looking pale and embarrassed. They insisted it was a misunderstanding. I repeated their exact words back to them: calm, factual. They eventually agreed to boundaries: no financial manipulation, no childcare expectations, no interference. My mother cried, saying she didn't know I felt trapped. I told her I had been telling her for years, just not in ways she chose to hear. My father asked what came next. Now you deal with what you created, I said. And I live my life. My first morning in the new apartment felt like breathing real air for the first time. Sunlight warmed the walls, coffee steamed in the quiet, and for once, I felt the weight lift. Serena and I rebuilt something real. My parents and I reached a fragile peace built on respect, not pressure. Leaving wasn't rebellion, it was survival. Choosing myself didn't destroy my family. It revealed the cracks they refused to see. And for the first time, I understood this clearly. Love without respect is just control dressed as tradition. Choosing yourself is not selfish. It's necessary. And this was only the beginning. 3 months passed before my parents attempted real contact again, and by then, my life had shifted into a version of peace I didn't know was possible. My new apartment had settled into a rhythm: quiet mornings, steady workdays, evenings filled with the kind of silence that didn't feel empty but healing. Yet healing doesn't mean forgetting, and the past has a way of knocking on your door even when you've changed the locks. It started with an email from Serena. Not a guilt message, not a crisis dump, just a single line. Can we talk? Just us? I hesitated, but something in me wanted to believe that maybe things could be different between us, free from the shadow of our parents. We met at a small cafe near my office, the kind with warm lighting and soft music. Serena looked tired, really tired, but not the dramatic exhaustion she used to weaponize. This was different. She apologized sincerely, in a way I had never heard from her in our entire lives. She admitted she had known about the plan, that she had allowed it, that she had assumed I would agree because I always did. She said she felt sick when she realized what our parents were willing to do to keep her life running smoothly. For the first time, she acknowledged the imbalance. We grew up in the pedestal she lived on and the quiet corner I was assigned to. And then she told me something I didn't expect. She and Ethan were separating. Their marriage, polished from the outside, had been falling apart for years. The constant childcare demands weren't just exhaustion, they were survival. She cried quietly, not loudly, not theatrically. Real tears. The kind that don't ask for attention, only understanding. I listened, not because I owed her anything, but because for once, she wasn't taking something from me. She was simply telling the truth. Over the next few weeks, Serena and I spoke more. Not about parenting schedules or obligations, about us, our childhood, our roles, our fears. Slowly, something fragile but honest formed between us. Meanwhile, my parents stayed distant, which I was grateful for, until my mother showed up at my office unannounced. She wasn't angry. She wasn't crying. She looked small. She asked if we could speak somewhere private. Her voice trembled, not with guilt, but with something like fear. We sat on a bench outside the building, winter air brushing past us. For the first time in my life, she admitted, she didn't know how to love two daughters equally. She said she had always seen Serena as fragile and me as strong, and in trying to protect one daughter, she unintentionally sacrificed the other. She said she thought I didn't need anyone. And then she said something that cut deeper than anything before. I didn't realize strength isn't the same as not needing love. I didn't cry. I didn't break. I just listened. Years of silence don't disappear with one confession, but it was a start, a slow, cautious start. My father reached out next, in his stiff, formal way. He wanted to meet to clarify misunderstandings, but I refused. Not out of anger, but because I didn't have anything left to clarify. They had crossed a line that required time, not conversation, to heal. Weeks turned into months, and gradually, boundaries stopped feeling like walls and started feeling like structure. I visited Serena a few times, helped her when I chose to, not when I was forced. My parents learned to ask instead of assume. And I learned something too, that leaving wasn't a betrayal. It was the first step in teaching them how to treat me. One evening, as I sat in my apartment with warm lamplight spilling across the brick walls, I realized how far I had come. Not just in location, but in self-worth. No obligations pulling at me, no guilt sinking its teeth into my decisions. Just freedom, peace, choice. My parents may never fully understand the damage they caused, but understanding wasn't my responsibility anymore. Healing was. And I was finally doing it. Part 2 wasn't dramatic. It wasn't chaotic. It was quieter, heavier, deeper. It was the part where I learned I didn't need to run, I just needed to stand. And for the first time, I did. 2 more months passed, and by then my life had settled into a calm rhythm I never imagined I would experience. But life has a strange way of testing the strength you've just begun to build. It started with a message from my father, short, stiff, formal. There is something we need to discuss. It concerns the apartment. At first, panic surged through me. I thought they were trying to pull me back into the same cycle. But when I met him at a small, neutral cafe, my conditions, my choice, it became clear the conversation wasn't about manipulation anymore. My father looked older, tired in a way I had never seen. He didn't posture. He didn't raise his voice. He simply sat across from me with a folded paper and a shaking hand. He told me the family finances were worse than any of us knew. Serena's kids, Ethan's departure, legal fees from mediation, and the nanny's salary had drained them. For the first time, I saw the truth. They weren't just trying to control me. They were drowning, and they had always expected me to extend myself to keep them afloat. But now, they were acknowledging it, not asking, acknowledging. He admitted that their dependence on me had been unfair, wrong, and deeply damaging. He said he couldn't undo the past, but he wanted to stop repeating it. For a moment, I didn't know what to say. I had spent my whole life being the fixer, the stabilizer, the one who filled in the cracks they pretended didn't exist. But now that they were admitting the cracks, it didn't make me want to rush and it made me want to breathe. I told him calmly that I wasn't responsible for the consequences of choices they made without me, that I loved my family, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my life again just because they didn't know how to manage theirs. He didn't argue. He simply nodded, eyes down, and for once he listened. After the conversation, I expected to feel guilt. Instead, I felt something unexpected: power. Not power over them, power over myself, my boundaries, my peace. Meanwhile, Serena's separation became official, and she moved into a smaller apartment with the kids. She struggled, yes, but she never asked me to sacrifice myself, not once. And because she didn't demand, I chose to help in small ways: a grocery run, a night of babysitting when I genuinely had time, not out of pressure, but out of choice. And every time I left her apartment, I realized something. This was what real family support was supposed to feel like: free, mutual, without chains. One evening, as I sat with her on her living room floor, surrounded by moving boxes, she said softly, "I didn't realize how much I depended on you until you were gone," I replied. "I didn't realize how much I depended on myself until I left." We both laughed, but it wasn't empty. It was the kind of laugh that comes from healing. But the real turning point came a few weeks later, when my mother asked to meet, not to push, not to guilt me, but to apologize properly. She brought a small plastic bag with her. Inside was a stack of old drawings I had made as a child, pictures of me helping around the house, babysitting, doing chores. Pictures she had labeled with dates and little notes, like Chloe helping Serena or Chloe doing the dishes. I stared at them, speechless, realizing she had documented my childhood not as childhood memories, but as years of service. My mother's hands trembled as she said, "I didn't understand what I was doing to you. I thought I was encouraging responsibility. I didn't see I was stealing your childhood." For a long moment, I couldn't speak. Not because I was angry, but because I finally understood. They hadn't simply taken me for granted, they had shaped me into someone who didn't even know how to say no. And now, slowly, painfully, they were learning who I really was. I walked home that night thinking about everything: my past, my boundaries, my new life, and I realized something important. Healing was not just mine. They were healing too, in their own flawed, slow way. I wasn't responsible for their journey, but I could witness it from a distance without drowning in it. And with that realization, I felt something lift inside me, something old and heavy and no longer needed. Part 3 wasn't about leaving or fighting. It was about standing in the middle of everything: family, history, pain, and choosing peace over fear, choice over obligation, myself over the version they built. And for the first time, I felt like I wasn't just surviving. I was growing. 3 months later, life had settled into a rhythm so balanced, so strangely peaceful, that sometimes I caught myself waiting for the next disaster, the next guilt-soaked phone call, the next attempt to pull me back into a life I no longer lived. But nothing came. Instead, something unexpected began to happen. The silence that once felt like distance started to feel like understanding. My parents didn't push. They didn't call with demands. They didn't show up unannounced. For the first time in my life, they were learning how to interact with me without expecting something in return. It was new territory for all of us. One Sunday afternoon, as I sat by the big window in my new apartment, sunlight spilling like warm honey across the floor, my phone buzzed. A message from Serena: "The kids want to invite you to Ellie's birthday. No pressure, just, we'd love to have you. Only if you want. Only if you want." That sentence alone showed how far everything had shifted. I stared at the screen for a long second and then typed simply, "I'll come." The small backyard gathering was nothing fancy: some balloons, a homemade cake, plastic chairs, toys scattered in the grass. But the moment I walked in, Ruby ran to me with the kind of joy that wasn't built on expectation, just love. Serena hugged me tightly, not out of desperation, but gratitude. And for the first time in years, I felt like I was part of the family without being owned by it. When I finally sat down, my parents approached hesitantly, as if unsure they even had the right. My father spoke first, quietly, almost awkwardly. "Thank you for being here." My mother added, "We're trying, Chloe." "We really are." I nodded, and it wasn't out of obligation, it was out of truth. Healing wouldn't erase the past, It wouldn't rewrite the years I spent being the fixer, the steady one, the one who swallowed boundaries until I didn't have any left. But healing could build something new, something better, something honest. And that was enough. As the sun dipped low and golden light painted the yard, I watched the kids play, Serena laugh, my parents talk calmly near the porch. And for the first time, I saw them not as the people who once cornered me but as flawed humans learning painfully, slowly, how to be better. When I left the party, Serena walked me to my car. She squeezed my hand. "You saved yourself," she whispered. And somehow, it saved all of us too. Her words stayed with me long after I drove away. That night, I sat in my apartment surrounded by quiet that no longer felt defensive. It felt like choice. It felt like home. I realized that the freedom I fought for wasn't just a moment, it was a life. A life where my boundaries mattered. A life where love didn't feel like a leash. A life I built with my own hands, brick by brick, decision by decision, step by painful step. And as I turned off the lamp and let the darkness settle gently around the room, one thought came to me with absolute clarity. I didn't just escape my family's control. I redefined what family meant. I rewrote the rules. I reclaimed my place in the world. And for the first time, the story wasn't about survival anymore. It was about beginning. A beginning that was mine, undeniably, strongly, beautifully mine.